way through. So I want to make sure that we get the record going. And can you all see my screen?
Yes, ma'am. I see a lovely picture of you and then our questions.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So I want to welcome everybody to Chat with the Chief series. I am your host, Anne Marie. And I started these series this year to just give folks an opportunity to hear different perspectives from experts out there who are either chief of staffs or they have proximity to a chief of staff, and to give you more information into the role. So I have a couple of slides that I share at the beginning, but then we're going to spend the lion's share of the time having a wonderful conversation with a dear friend, colleague, mentor, Elizabeth Stevens. And then I'll also be posting my calendar link. If you are interested in learning more about this role, you can reach out and set up some time with me. I would be happy to connect with anybody on the call so we can chat. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. Anne Marie Otana is the Chief of Staff Architect. I have been able to work for some amazing companies and a startup. So this gives you a little bit of a history about me. I wrote my first book about the Chief of Staff role last year, and it did well. And so I'm in the process of writing my second book to hopefully come out next year. And so keep your eyes open for that, because I would love for you to continue your learning experience with me in this specific role. Like I said, I'm the Chief of Staff Architect. I've been doing strategic work for over 15 years. I love to get credentials, and so I have a variety of different certifications. And I also created a Chief of Staff Academy that if you are looking for some of the core fundamentals that every Chief of Staff should be familiar with, the Academy is where you want to enroll. So again, I'll post my calendar information in there. So if you want to meet and learn more, I would be happy to have a conversation with you. So this is, for me, this is the thrilling part. I'm excited to introduce you to Elizabeth Stevens, and I'm going to let her also give you some more insight into herself. But she is the founder and CTO at DBS Cybersecurity Company, a amazing organization that is doing new and innovative things in the space of security and ensuring that things are kept where they need to be. So we don't have the issues that we see all of the time. She is a veteran, she is an author, she is a coach. She is a very good friend of mine. We both actually worked together at Microsoft for a little while, and then she spread her wings and created, like I said, this amazing security company. So Elizabeth, I want to give you a few minutes so you can tell my folks all about you.
Thank you, Anne Marie. We've been friends for a long time, and Anne Marie is one of the most amazing people that I've met, and I've met a lot of people in the world. My name is Elizabeth Stevens. As she said, I'm the CTO and founder of a company called DBS Cyber. DBS Cyber is a business whose mission is to protect families, and we do that through several different things. One of which is cybersecurity and AI, whether it's strategic advisory, workforce uplift, or helping a community develop with our Cyber Kids process program and boot camps. My journey from the cockpit of a Marine Corps aircraft, being the first there, to leading the cyber risk intelligence team at Microsoft taught me principles of crisis leadership, are the same wherever you are, whether you're on enemy fire. In some cases, I feel like you and me, Anne Marie, were, or under a nation state attack. They're the same. Thank you. It's one of our interns right here. That's actually the S in DBS. So they're the same, whether you're under enemy fire or under a nation state attack. And in the space of this chief of staff and corporate, or even today at DBS, where my mission's to apply that unique mission-focused expertise and help organizations and families build an unbreakable digital resilience, I believe that cybersecurity is not a leadership problem. AI is not a corporate tool. they are not technology problems. That the best thing, there are problems, and the best thing that we can do for ourselves and for the future to be resilient is for us to use those tools in our communities in the way that we need to use those tools, the way that we naturally would use those tools. And that will accelerate when we're under pressure, when we're operating as a chief of staff, when we're
Yep.
operating in airplanes, or when things are not going the way that they need to go. Um, and that actually brings me to the heart, like the heart of my chief of staff role story. I'm looking at Anne Marie because I'm like, oh, she made me do it. That's awesome. Which is about creating like the necessary operational clarity, right? I
Mhm.
call it operational clarity, right? And the influence, right? In fact, everything I learned about effective leadership in this role boils down to three principles. It's the three T's. It's trust, transparency, and transformation. And like,
Wonderful.
I'm excited to dive in with you because you're my favorite chief of staff and the only one that I hired.
Awesome, awesome. So folks, like I said, what you're gonna get with us for the next little while, Elizabeth and I are gonna have a conversation. I've got questions that I want her to answer for us, and then, as is the case, we'll break for just a minute because I want to hear from you. She wants to hear from you, so you can either put your questions in the chat or just use the Q&A thing, and we will get to all of the questions. But we are going to let's get started talking. So I'm going to stop sharing, and it's just about me and Elizabeth. So getting started, Elizabeth, tell me, how did being a chief of staff in the military shape the way that you are a chief of staff in a corporate environment, like when we worked at Microsoft?
Okay. So the most critical skill transfer was trust and discipline, right? So in the Marine Corps, trust is like oxygen. You have to predict the reliability of your crew, the reliability of your equipment, and you have to do all of this under chaotic environments. Um,
Right.
that itself carried directly to Microsoft. I made myself my executive's single source of truth, right? I demonstrated reliability by bringing the decision ready materials. For me, the biggest adjustment was not necessarily learning to operate without formal authority. So like operating without authority means you have to operate with influence.
Right.
Um, but having like recognizing that the level of competence
Hmm.
that you bring to the role, like I say in the rank in the military, right? But the level of competence, not confidence, but competence
Right.
bring to the role, you add that to being reliable,
Hmm.
and that becomes a level of authority of its own.
Right. Right. You
Did that
said something,
accurate?
you said something really interesting that I would love for you to clarify further for our guests on the call. Operating without authority, but with influence, because we know that the chief of staff role is, well, when executives know how to leverage a chief of staff, it literally changes the game completely.
Yep.
But quite often, chiefs don't necessarily have a team, or they might have a small team, or they're operating as ICs, but they're crafting these initiatives and they're helping make these decisions, but they don't have, and I'm doing air quotes, authority, but they do have authority. So can you expand on that? What does it mean to operate with influence and not necessarily authority?
So I think that's like the Zen of leadership. That's the true thing. For me, it comes down, so there's one, how do you do that, right?
Mhm.
It comes down to that predictive reliability that I was talking about, right? So from the battlefield to the boardroom, I go back to the air medal mission. Um, when I flew that mission, it was scary. No one was supposed to come back by my own like predictions, right? So we all, both crews that I was leading, had to go on this mission together. In those circumstances, I had to trust my co-pilot over everything else when he was calling out the altitude, so the level above the ground. And the rest of the crew, whenever they said anything about an obstacle in the space, because I couldn't see anything, right? I'm the pilot flying the aircraft. So our executives,
Wow.
literally under zero visibility in a corporate storm. See, you like that?
Yes.
You earn their trust by never bringing them the problem without 3 vetted solutions, right?
Right.
Like my 3 courses of action. So for the guests out there, Anne Marie, when I first said, hey, we need the COAs, she was like, okay, what? Okay, you keep saying military words. I'm like, oh, our courses of action. She's like, oh, 3 options. Now, yes, that's it, right? So you always bring them these solutions. And I said vetted. That means that they're not just, we threw something at the wall to see what sticks. You're going, hey, if you do this, then you can do this. And when you
Yes.
give them that, and you make sure that whatever you bring to them is decision ready, actionable, that's the proactive discipline that establishes that trust, and it establishes it immediately. And when your executive trusts you, like when your executive trusts you, his staff trusts you, his partners trust you, and they know that you, this potentially new person to the role, new to the group, right? Different than them because they've been together since maybe they were a startup, right? They've been together for decades. They know that they can rely on you, and they know how much that executive relies on the chief of staff. And so when you speak, you don't just speak with his authority. You don't just speak with your own authority. You actually speak with all of the authority of the people who, when you're trying to get something done, someone goes, well, why should I help you? And all of that staff, all of those VPs, all of the people that you help and who count on you every day to keep them out of trouble, they've already gone, she's helping me, we need to get it done. So whose authority are you using? It's the credibility that you get by helping and doing the things that you do best with the people that have actually paid and trusted you to do them. So that's what I talk about, authority without influence.
I like that because we're talking about impact. We're talking about putting your team, your leader in a situation where they don't have to think that hard because you've done some of that heavy lifting. And so now it becomes, now you're just partners going through, like you said, you've got these vetted solutions. So it's not, well, I need to still talk to someone, but it's, I talk to all of these individuals. This is what I think is the best. This would be my recommendation. I had a business manager who she always did this, always. It was something that was a beautiful sight to behold because her responsibility was towards the financial aspects of our business. And every time there was a problem, she would say, all right, well, here's what I recommend, and this is why. It's just, again, like you said, it's building this credibility. And for me, as the chief of staff, I was in a position where I was like, whatever she says is gold for me.
Exactly.
And then when I would talk to my executive, I'm like, did you talk to so-and-so? Because this is what she shared with me. I'm good with that. Like it's the circle of trust that you have with individuals. So you know that everyone is doing the most for that team.
Well, I mean, you hit it several times. Like it's the trust, right? Because there's always going to be skepticism. And I know like some of the audience members are going to be like, yeah, they trust you because you're you. No, there's always skepticism, right? But that usually comes from lack of context. So you build that trust by like communicating and even leading as the chief with transparency, right? Because you said it. They said, this is who I talked to. This is how I came to my answer. This is why my analysis is valid, right? So for you, that's transparency, right? Because it's 3 T's: transparency, transformation. For you as the chief of staff, that proactively shows your leader, like this is your data.
Right.
this is how your strategy aligns to the success, right? You
Yeah.
eliminate the guesswork, right? You eliminate suspicion when you eliminate the guesswork. And then it becomes about being like, it's the most reliable source. Like,
Hmm.
become the most reliable source, but not just a source, but you're a source of objective truth, right?
Yes.
They know
Yes.
that we're not just saying, yes, I want you to do this because I want you to do it. They know
Yeah.
that, like, we've talked to you, you've
Mhm.
talked to people, your pattern shows that this is what you do, and you've proven what to expect. And I think that's the tactic. Like, sometimes you don't talk about the tactics that you do because you do it so naturally, but that need to be transparent, to communicate effectively, that's not about like being a better chief of staff. It's actually about better communication.
Yes. Yeah. And I think the thing that's interesting also about what you said is you're starting to build a level of confidence with people with your responses. So on the flip side,
Hmm.
something goes wrong
Yep.
or you misstate, the immediate reaction is that, oh, this, it's wait a minute. Elizabeth usually is spot on. Let's find out what happened.
There you go.
You get that grace that I think a lot of times people don't get a chance to experience because you don't want to make a mistake, but we make mistakes. It is just life. Everybody makes mistakes. And to be in a position where if you have a oops or a gotcha, the immediate reaction isn't wow, you screw the pooch. It's wait a minute. I have come to trust this person, so I need to understand, like you said, context, what happened. And that builds better trust and more transparency because you can say, no, you know what, I did miscalculate. And if you have a good principal, and I've been able to work for some amazing principals, they're like, okay, it is what it is.
But it is like the chief of staff role is it's a high wire act. Like, it's literally like, how do you balance, like, everybody thinks of different things for the role, but the chief of staff role, it's literally a high wire act where you're balancing the transparency with the loyalty, right?
Yeah.
You gotta be loyal to the mission and the truth, right? From both a military perspective and a corporate perspective. And like my chiefs, like, if you're my chief, I love you. Like, we're in it, we're ride or die. Like, I have committed, but that doesn't mean that the things that you've committed to are things that I want to commit to, right?
Right.
So if you
Right.
have the context, right, you understand, you deliver the full ground truth, and that's what you're known to do. You also have the documentation and the data flow, right?
Hmm.
So I love how we say, like, they give you the grace. If you're doing this and you're doing the ground truth, and you're doing unemotional, you're doing clean and objective, and you're using the data, not guessing, then that rigorous level of transparency, that's what preserves their trust.
Yes.
They don't come back to us and say, pointing the pointy finger and putting their fingers in your chest because they're like, that doesn't sound like Anne Marie. It sort of is, but it's mostly because no, no, my data is always accurate. Well, I know that this, and this. So why is the thing that we always do not working? It's not our process because we did our process,
Right.
right?
Right.
And that's what you get, like, when you get like loyalty questions, context questions, pushback questions. It's that transparency which preserves the trust when you're not in the room. And then the pushback, right? We get the pushback when
Yeah.
someone else deviates from the agreed upon path and mission and the commander's intent. Because from a military perspective, chief of staff owns the commander's intent. Right.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think that translates, Amber, you have to help me on this one. I think it translates, at least the way I translated it is, if you have a KPI or a mission that directly aligns to the success criteria of your chief VP, or the person that you're serving, we call them our chiefs, right? Whoever your commander is, you know what their mission is, you know how that aligns to the business and aligns to, like, the answers and the questions and the budget. It's your job to
Yes.
understand that, so you make sure that everyone can communicate it. In
Yeah.
understanding that, you've become the source of the truth.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
No.
that should be empowering.
You got it right on. The chief of staff, we always say, is an extension of the person that they've partnered with. And I
Mm.
use the word partner, not necessarily support, because you're still supporting, but honestly, it's a partnership.
Can we walk that one back?
Yeah.
Because it's absolutely essential to understand the difference,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So the way that you and I, chief of staff, it's a partnership.
Yes.
We're not admins, because for a reason, because we don't do just admin. We're not like secretaries because we don't do secretary. We're not operations officers because we don't just do operations, right?
Hmm.
For us, we're strategic advisors. We're industry strategic advisors and company specific strategic
Hmm.
advisors that are key in organization. Technically, it's whatever the person needs. Like Anne-Marie, your chief of staffing is an ops CEO chief of staffing. My chief of staffing is an ops CTO chief of staffing.
Right.
It works for whoever the role and the person that you work for is.
Yes.
In the way that we talk about, like, some early in your chief of staff, I wouldn't recommend this. This is why I recommend being a business manager first. But early in your chief of staff life, you may just support your chief. That is the very bottom intern level chief of staff. If you're truly doing chief of staffing, you know your VP and their directorate, their area of influence, their sphere, as well as I knew my aircraft when I was flying it because my life depended on it. That
Hmm.
level of commitment and loyalty needs to be reciprocated. Therefore, like, this is why we talk trust, transparency, right?
Hmm.
Trust and transparency, because it's not just for them, it's also
Right.
for us. And so we it's almost a contract for you and I, the way we do this. But that
Yeah.
also yields the benefits,
Yes.
right? So you can support.
Right. But it's a partnership. It is a true partnership between you and, like I said, that principal, because you are building the strategy with them,
Hmm.
so that you understand the strategy with them. You're making sure that the team understands the strategy, and you might be the first person that they ask questions about, because sometimes individuals have a hesitation
She
to talk
said
to the
might be.
people.
You said might be. Those of you that have PMPs, chief of staff is mostly a gatekeeper, but also a stakeholder, right? Like, you can't get to the VP without the chief of staff, but sometimes the staff need to be able to ask stupid questions to somebody that's not going to get them in trouble. And that's where the loyalty comes in. So they
Mhm.
need to know that they can ask you questions in sanctuary. And
Yeah.
that's what Anne-Marie is talking about.
Yeah.
I love that you say, I said we do it a little different. She says that we help them with the strategy, like help them communicate the strategy, help them like polish the strategy. In my chief of staff, we create the strategy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's leveraging your strengths again, like we said. I mean, you're the expert. Like, so I feel as if this is like role evolution, I guess, right? So this is where you train. Chief of staff, you need to be already, this like training camp for football. You're already good at the thing.
Yes.
You're good enough at a thing and you know how to do things. You might even already be good at strategic leadership and need to learn product. Like, you're good at being you. Okay. What Chief of Staff as a real role does, it is the ultimate training ground for strategic leadership. Like, it prepared me for being a CEO role, like my own CEO, CCO company, because I had accountability for budget, I had accountability for hiring, I had like, you had all these accountabilities. And that's a chief of staff that wasn't called a chief of staff. This is when Anne-Marie and I worked together. I was a business manager.
Yeah.
I was a business manager, right? And so it prepared me for that, because as the organization's doing, like, because we're accountable for all of those things, we're accountable for the organization's transformation, right? Anne Marie's always like, where's your 30, 60, 90? Whenever she starts something new, because she knows she has to orient on the organization first because that's exactly the role that she's taking. The biggest misconception about our role as chief of staff is that it's administrative. It's actually not. Like, it's the executives, like I said, strategic advisor, but what we do is strategy acceleration, right?
Yeah.
The role evolves and has different types of roles because we are the executives internal expert on AI governance, sovereign
Mhm.
risk, strategic foresight, organizational behavior, executive communications, right? Or in my case, product development, right? So all of those things. So my best advice, like when people are thinking about the role or you're thinking about what's the next step for you or which principle, because Emery just call them principles, which principle you're going to achieve for,
Yes.
right? Master the methodology of the role, not
Love that.
master the methodology, right? Not the tasks.
Yes. I
Master the
love that.
methodology. Go ahead, girl. I mean, I just you being
No, I love that. And I wanted to jump to another series of questions, but we got a great question that came through. So I want to um have you respond to this question. I'd love to hear it. And Roxy, congratulations. So Roxy says, I was recently promoted from an EA to a business manager. That is wonderful. I'm having a bit of a
right.
challenging pivot and focusing. I'm having a bit of a challenging time pivoting and focusing on the business management priorities for my role slash reports, such as reports, presentations, and strategy. Any recommendations? The caveat is I'm currently filling in for that EA role because someone just left. So how would you respond to that, Liz? I've got some thoughts, but I want to give you the first opportunity to respond.
But I always respond with questions, right? So I'll look at the chat text too for Roxy. Congratulations, by the way. And we find that oftentimes the person best suited for chief of staff is actually an EA. Because the EA role is one where you have to figure it out. So that does give you a benefit though. So in saying that, I'm actually going, you got this. So my question for you is, so when you say you were promoted from executive admin to a business manager, the things that you were doing as an EA, the way that Anne Marie and I have experienced, or at least the way I experienced it while I was experiencing it in the same sphere as Anne Marie, the EA role is technically the task portion
Mhm.
of chief of staffing. And task portion goes through business manager because you're
Mhm.
also like business manager is a chief of staff that doesn't have the insight to the strategy or
Mhm.
the commander's intent, right? So moving from an EA to a business manager should be challenging because you started out in the business manager, we're doing this. So if you're like me, which is different than Anne Marie, if you're like me, you're probably doing like 10 EA things. Like you're so good at EA and you're doing 10 EA things. But those 10
Mhm.
EA things are this level of thing. And they have like maybe one sub level underneath them. Business manager is now, I have a whole bunch of things that
Right.
affect a whole bunch of other things. And the reason that you're having a problem with management priorities or your reports and presentations and strategy is because you haven't done it before. You have not done it before, right? And I'm gonna say it out loud because I can, Anne Marie. And Roxy, you can go tell whoever was your business manager when you were an EA, they didn't do their job preparing you for the shift, right? In the Marine Corps, and I think this has benefited most of the people that have worked with me or been my mentor and mentees, Anne Marie, that I've worked with. In the Marine Corps, there's two things that you have to think about when you work with someone from the military that experienced the military the same way I do. One, you can't get rid of a bad seed. They are on the team regardless. You can't just get rid of them. Everybody's with you. So if somebody isn't good for their role, you either figure out how to make them good at that role or you figure out how you change and transform the team so that the team can accomplish what they're doing. That's not corporate, but that's a mindset, right? The
Mhm.
second thing is if you don't do your role, people die. Okay. And so when I, as a chief of staff, so I've been like, you don't have to be an EA, then a business manager, and then a chief of staff. You can actually do all this while you're in a different job, right? You can be an EA, you can be a business manager while you're in a different job. When you're picking the people that you're working with or working for, you need to make sure that they understand that you're great at working for them because you have a vision. You're probably amazing because you've mastered your skill set, but they got to show you the next level.
Mm.
And if they are not doing that, it's their fault.
Yeah.
But your accountability, because the RACI, right? Your accountability is defined an Anne Marie or an Elizabeth or a Roxy like in your organization, because the reporting part, the business, the like reports, presentation, strategy, that part's the easy part, right? The report, that part's pretty much, we just got to get a process together and transcript it. The hard part is understanding what's important in that data. Like, why are we doing these reports? Because ask Anne Marie, I swear every time she goes into an organization, she scraps just about all of their operations. They go from having 90 meetings to like 30 in a month. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I'm like, that's because y'all was wasting time. She's showing you how y'all wasting time. Like,
Yeah.
I go into a place, this is the worst part, because she likes doing the reports. I go into a place, and the first thing I do is, or the first thing that they get out of me, because this is probably why they pick us for the jobs, Anne Marie. First thing they get out of me is like a 30-page report on their operations and how what they told me they were doing is not what they're actually doing. So, you got this, okay? It's perspective. It's supposed to be challenging because you ain't never done it before. Or let me try that again, Anne Marie. It's going to be challenging because it's a new opportunity to make impact in spaces where you've never made impact before.
Yep, absolutely. And I wanted to add on some of the things that you said. And Roxy, you and I, we've met several times. Put time on my calendar so we can definitely chat. Because again, congratulations on this promotion. Elizabeth did a wonderful job in framing how you should approach it from a holistic perspective. So understanding the big rocks, what's the big picture? And then I want to take it down just the level to say some of the things that I do when I am moving from one role to another is first understanding what from my former role do I need to give up and what from my current role do I need to take in. And if I'm giving stuff up, I've got to find either individuals that are taking that on or have an agreement with my principal saying, I used to, but I'm not anymore because I'm operating in this capacity. So there needs to be a transfer where they recognize you're moving from one space to another space, even though you're helping, but you're moving out of that space. So you aren't the, well, this person was our EA, so just keep pinging them. No, 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 no. I need you to recognize that you need to go to this route. The other thing is there's so many different frameworks on how you break up your time. For me, the process that works the best is time blocking. And I'm a list person. I am very old school. I've got my notebook. I know the things that need to be accomplished. Those are more the tactical aspects. So once you understand holistically what's going on, you can start to break it down into the tactical. And I have my list and I will schedule 2 hours or 3 hours. And I have 5 things in that thing that I need to get done. No notifications, nothing on the cell phone, because the worst thing for me is if I'm in the zone and then I'm distracted, because then it takes me 15, 20 minutes to get back. And then, well, maybe I'll go to the bathroom and I'll grab a snack and blah, blah, blah. And then now I'm 2.5 hours in and I've accomplished one of my 5.
Context switching.
And so time blocking for the work that you need to do, but also time blocking for you time. So you can step away. So you can either go and meditate, or you can go for a walk with your dog, or you can just go and sit out in your backyard. And so there's a couple of different ways to start to organize your time. And so like I said, Roxy, let's get together. And then regarding presentations, I don't remember if you were on one of my training calls, but I use a tool for presentations that is a game changer. and that will help you. And so, again, I appreciate the question. I love it. Looking forward to chatting with you to help you on this journey. And Liz, your insights were phenomenal. So the thing I actually wanted to ask you, because
Mhm,
you spent a lot of time in the military and then
mhm.
moved into this corporate space, what did you find were the biggest differences from being in the military and then being in a commercial space?
Ooh, that is a good question. So I guess ask me again, Anne Marie. What is the
What did you find was like the biggest differences as you were chiefing and
Yeah.
outside of the fact that you're
Yeah,
chiefing?
as opposed to military versus no, like so I think for me, so the reason I said ask it again is because my head went immediately, like inappropriately. What is the biggest difference between chief of staffing for the military and chief of staffing for corporate for Elizabeth Stevens?
Mhm,
Chief of staffing in corporate, I don't know, this probably won't help any of your listeners, but chief of staffing in corporate for me was an active decision to work with someone and put my well-being
mhm,
in their hands. In the
mhm,
military, I know regardless of what general, what company, where they're at, these are their expectations, right? And you
mhm,
just talked about how you time box and you set boundaries and to protect yourself. For the listeners out there, you can't, you have to have good boundaries, right?
yes.
You cannot, you have to listen, Emery, time boxing, we all do it. You have to have good boundaries. It's not balance, it's harmony, right?
Mhm,
Something, nothing's ever going to be equal or any of that, but you got to
mhm,
put your energy and investment where you want the reward to be. Um, when I could chief of staff for any general, right?
mhm,
It would be a decision like I don't have a choice. I could chief of staff for any general, but I knew exactly what the expectation was of me, and I knew exactly where the left and right lateral limits were. In the corporate world, you have to rely on that person to to be to have integrity, to
mhm,
have your bag,
mhm,
to understand, to actually read your emails. Because if you're moving as fast as we move, right? I said before in the military, it's two things you can remember that are different. You don't get rid of people, you help them because they are a part of you, they're a part of your organization, regardless of whether you
mhm,
like them or not, right? Regardless of whether they're good at their job or not, you figure it out. You in corporate, people will be on the team just to take a paycheck or
mhm.
just to get somebody else fired. They don't care as much as you do. They could care less. They're clocking in, clocking out. That's a possibility. Like, no,
Right.
right? That could be the same as a person that you're serving. At Microsoft, when I first got there, they had no idea what a project manager was. Like, no idea. And then you and I both experienced that transformation. So I literally landed at a place where they're like, we do this, and this. And we need you to do this, and this. And I was like, cool, that's what I want to do. And I said, this and this. And they're like, yes, no, you could do all of this. And then I landed and they're like, we actually didn't know what that was. Can you teach us? Right? Which is not okay to
Right.
a person that's used to moving with integrity, trust, transparency, right? That's the difference from an emotional perspective. When I went to work for my chief, we had this long talks. Like it was, we might as well have done premarital counseling in my head, right? I'm like, what your wife do, what your children do, how many kids you got, what's it feel like? You know, I got three, you ain't got a problem with that. I do this, and this. Like the only
Mhm.
thing like we talked about the three sickness, religion, and politics. Cause
All of it.
right, who you gonna be with? And
Mhm,
so the choice to like one, there's a choice, right?
mhm,
There's a choice in corporate. But the biggest difference was it makes when you know that the two of you are committed, not just because of like altruism or the service
or-
or the paycheck, you can do so much more than you can do alone. and the
Yeah.
team feels that, and you run fast. Now, I mean, I know McEmery, like I'm a Marine Corps pilot, like I'm a decorated combat veteran, but like the feeling, I can't help that feeling from making me smile. Like the feeling that we were a team, the feeling that like I would go do a thing and not know, and then be in front of someone and like when I had to call, so the big boss's admin and be like, why am I on this man's schedule? And she's like, your boss said he can't do it, so you need to do it. You're good with that, right? And I was like, oh, this man has confidence. And why am I talking to big boss? Of course, I called Anne Marie immediately. I'm like, I gotta go talk, right? So that's the difference, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a personal difference. Now, I'll back away from the feelings because I have feelings. Difference between chief of staff and in corporate and chief of staff and in the military as a position is nothing.
Mm.
It's nothing. Even with the like, you have to be more careful because when you do trust transparency and transformation, and the team and you guys are operating, and they say, hey, who's not holding their weight, who's not pulling their gear, and you say a name, they will fire them.
Right.
You could get into a conversation like the boss says we need to do X, Y, and Z, and here's why. Everybody's like thumbs up, and somebody in that room that's core, critical to the thing, they never wanted to agree. They just lied to you and said that they agreed.
Ugh,
Right?
yeah.
And who's responsible for that? Typically, the chief of staff is the persona and the embodiment of the risk mitigation. You're
Mhm.
going to end up having to do the work or convince that person to do the work or be ahead of that person to do the work. So when I say it's like the crucible for strategic leadership.
Mhm. It really is.
It is, and nobody's on the same page. There's
Yeah.
consistency.
Yeah. It really is. And this is something that you'll have to help me understand a little bit better, because my perception of the chief of staffs in the military is there's a bit more structure and there's a better understanding of the role, where in
Mhm.
commercial space, it's very ambiguous sometimes, which is something that you alluded to. You get put into a position and they're like, this is what I think I need. And then you
Yeah.
get to it and it's nothing could be further from the truth. So now here you are rewriting what your role should be. And if you don't have a good solid understanding of the core things that you should be doing, you could be way off base. And so for me, when I started down my chief of staff journey, I must have interviewed 20 or 30 different chief of staffs, because I
Yeah.
want to understand, why are you doing it? How long have you been in it? Are you going to do it forever? What are the things that are the hardest? What are the things that are the easiest? What do you hate but you can't get rid of? And you
Mhm.
doing it, just a slew of questions so I could have a really solid understanding of the various perspectives. And like I said, for me, I've never been in the military, so I appreciate your view and your perspective. My perspective of the military seems like the stakes are higher, because for the most of the time, there are lives that are at risk. So unless you're working in a particular industry, medical, in security, where there are lives at risk, and this is going to sound very trite, but the ROI is the only thing that's really hurting a lot of these commercial companies versus the life of a troop, the life of a team. And so outside of those grand changes, it seems like it's a little bit more vetted. There's a better understanding, where for us in the commercial space, we're still trying to figure out, how do I make the boat go? How do I make it keep afloat? So correct me if I'm misunderstanding.
No, no. So I mean, your perspective is colored from the outside, though. I mean, you have to think about like everything you said resonates, right? You would maybe have that perspective because, like most organizations, and it's your fault actually because you're good at organizational behavior, and you like to think that the organization you're in is good at that, but generally it's because you're bringing structure to the chaos, Anne Marie, right? You're inside of it. In the Marine Corps, we make a point, like the execution, like my approach is based in the execution, like it's rooted in transformation, right? Because in the military, right, rightly so, lives will be at risk, but we're planning, we take everything that we can know,
Mm-hmm.
and we have the stuff we know, and we got the stuff we know. So that when we hit the stuff we don't know, we know what we know.
Right.
right? And so we know some things always change, human nature. People change, that's human nature, right?
Yeah.
People react a certain way, that's human nature. Certain people need structure at certain times, that's human nature, right? We
Yeah.
can account for that. We can say, hey, chief of staff, for this level of person, they do this, 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 and this.
Mhm.
You need to be their trusted advisor. You need to, you are here to organize their staff around that commander's intent. That's all they say, right? But I can read this is what that general is like, this is what he does. I can go talk to his chief of staff and be like, what does he want? What's he like? Right? Sound familiar? And then
Yeah.
we go through the interview, right? And this is why what was strange for me when you and I started talking about like positions and what we do, like I have to keep telling people, no, I'm interviewing them. Right. Like I know I want the job. I know I can be good at the job. I need to make sure I want to work for them. Right. That's what the Marine Corps does. Because for you,
Mm,
you're saying, hey, they know how to do this. They know how to do this. No, we know what part of it we always do.
yeah.
Do I know whether I'm going to be like getting like picking up his dry cleaning, riding with him back and forth to meetings or taking his notes, or like, one of my last guy, like creating all of his presentations, doing the presentations for him, like
Mm,
hanging out with the customers, right? Don't know which one that is. Got to find that out. But you got to
right.
be ready for it because in military, just like I love it. Like it's more important in the situations where it's urgent for my profession from a military perspective. Lives are at risk, but that urgency is well past the tip of the spear, right? We've risk mitigated as best as possible, right? Lives are in danger. In corporate, and this is the part that's hard for most military vets, I think, that come to this tech.
Hmm.
Everyone always says they're like, it's not like the military, no one's lives are at risk. But like the only reason we come to work is to serve.
Yeah.
The only reason I'm here is to make sure that the women and children that use our products can get the benefit and the value out of our products. And I don't mean they can make money on them. Like if we're talking about Microsoft, the one thing that like is still to this day, it's the women and children of WIC that like 2016, the biggest Azure outage at the time, right?
Hmm.
And we were down in the Texas data centers for some period of time, right? Like it could have been 5 days. It was all over the news. Like, I don't know if you remember, because I think this was, no, we knew each other at that point, I think.
Yeah.
Um, and when I was sitting in the room with Chris, right, we're incident responding, right? Mind you all in the audience, I'm just a project manager that happens to know how to do certain things, right?
Hmm.
So I'm incident responding and he turns to me and he's like, hey, I can't believe, because we're tired. We're tired. I'm a project manager. I'm not engineer. It's not even our job to be doing this. But
Right.
and he's like, I can't believe we're doing this because just to help some kids freaking play Xbox. And I was like, dude, some baby is trying to get her baby food, diapers with this. And they can't because the women and children of WIC, those cards are attached to the Azure data center. It's
Wow.
not the games. It's
Right.
people's lives still.
Right.
And so, like, if it's not like the product itself, right, that product does something for people. And the
Yes,
case of where, Microsoft, where we met, their products do a lot for a lot of people.
they do.
If you are a part of like a company like Microsoft, or if you're part of a company like McDonald's, and you don't think that what you do affects people's lives, you are not paying attention. Because even if we're talking about, even if you're making a hamburger, how long does it take? What the average American only makes about $11 an hour. You're getting paid 20 to make a hamburger. How long did it take somebody? Like that's 30 minutes of somebody's life where they could have been with their kid, they could have been praying, they could have been any
All
number
kinds.
of things, fulfilling their own dreams, spending time with the loved one that's about to pass. And because you feel tired, lazy, or it's not that important, instead of making their burger efficiently, effectively, you're like, it's not that important. And then that 30 minutes that they could have spent with their mom, dad, uncle before they passed, you just took that away from them and took their money. I don't think that that's the difference. I think it's perspective.
Yeah.
That's just a customer. Like, what about people like me that are going, I could be spending time with my babies at home.
Yeah.
They're like you. I know, like you.
Yes.
I'm sorry, that might have been too much. Give me
No,
a-
you're good. You're good. Actually, this is a nice place for us to break for just a few minutes because the conversation, I hope you all have been enjoying it. We're still going to go for a few more minutes. We're looking forward to the questions that you have. But before we pivot into those questions, again, I wanted to remind you that I'm glad that you joined us today on this journey. Um, this is all about understanding this role. If you are already doing the work of a chief of staff, how do you get recognized or get that title? If you're curious about doing the work of a chief of staff, my assistant has placed two important links for you in the chat. One is if you want to connect with Elizabeth, she's added Elizabeth's LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with Elizabeth. As you can tell, she's a powerhouse and knowledge in spades. If you want to learn more about this chief of staff journey that I've been talking about, and you are curious, book some time with me, get on my calendar, let's talk, and let's figure out what are the next steps for you. I did want to provide an update that next month our webinar will be canceled because I will actually be in Canada on at a conference on a panel. And so we won't have it in November, but we will be back for December. And I will be sending out a note to everybody. But like I said, this is your time now. I'm going to stop the share for you to let us know what are the questions that you have for Elizabeth. And I still have more questions for her, but I want to make sure that we get to your questions too. I'm going to check our Q&A to see if anything has popped up in there. Not yet. So go ahead and post your questions in the chat. But let me, while we're waiting for more questions, Liz, let me ask you this. What's one story from like your chief of staff journey that you keep with you to this day?
From the journey itself.
Yes.
So when I came to Microsoft, I was young and fresh. Like I'd barely been out of the Marine Corps 6 months, maybe a year. Like I retired. I did a one short stint at Semper US Gas and Power, which was great, where I fell in love with stuff, router switches, data centers, and then came to Microsoft thinking I was going to do secure infrastructure. I landed, identified people that I felt like had similar personas, not people that were like me, but had a similar like ethos, believed in certain things. And then I categorized those people as by their credibility, like direct impact to like the way that I could operate. And I started meeting with those people. Some I still do today, actually. And one of those people I met, uh, the chief of staff story part is that I went to, I think, I can't remember why we were traveling, but it was like this big deal. I was first time traveling. And I go to meet this person who's supposed to be like a sponsor. They joined Microsoft maybe like 6 months before I did.
Mhm.
And I was told like, hey, you just use the first 6 months to like kind of get your feet under you, get to feel things out, get to do things. And this person, like 6 days after I was there at Microsoft, when I got a major project or three dropped in my lap, was like, hey, chill, I'll help. And so the first time that I met this person, we went somewhere together. We met in person at the office, in the lobby, and we had the exact same outfit on in a different color. And I knew that my process to identify people that cared about the job, that were like me, that understood community and would be for us by us, worked.
Oh, if I could. The reason I laugh, everyone, because I'm listening to the story, I'm like, oh, I can't wait for her to. Oh, yeah, she and I had the same exact outfit. Our tops were different
It was
colors,
different color.
but it was the same top. We did not know that we had purchased it together. Black leggings, black boots, and I had taken on a very large project. And I had met Elizabeth and I said, will you come and work with me on this project? Because I want to split it in two. because I can't do all of it. And you take this part and I'll take this part. And that was the beginning of this amazing relationship that I've had with this woman. So folks, I did not know that that was the story that she's going to share. But as soon as she said same outfits, I went, and we took
Yeah.
laughed.
We have the proof. And for those of you that like, if you met me or you've met her, you can't tell right now, but Anne Marie is significantly taller than me. Like significantly taller. Okay. And so when people saw us, like first of all, we're on video conferences and people don't see
Yeah,
people. They just
yeah,
these little bitty like profiles. And so whenever I would talk, they were like, oh, Anne Marie. I'm like, no, I'm Elizabeth. Like we had this whole conversation like 16, 17 times. No, I'm Elizabeth. No, I'm Anne Marie. And to make it worse, there was another Anne Marie that was also of a brown, darker complexion. And so
yes,
it was a circus, right?
yeah.
But the reason that what that meant to me was that like from a
Mm,
project management perspective in corporate, you didn't have to ask me, you didn't have to let me, and then you didn't even have to like split it. You could have taken it and said, hey, just come do it. Because that's how the Marine Corps is.
mm,
You the one, show up tomorrow. But what Anne Marie did was not only did she give me choice, but she believed in the autonomy of the role. And she said, I need help with this, but like I don't want you to do it the way I'm going to do it. I need you to do it the way you can do it so we can be
yeah,
friends together.
yeah.
And that's
Oh,
the thing I've taken and continue to take forward.
thank you for sharing that. Again, I did not know that that was the story that you were going to share, but thank you. We've got 1 minute. I want to leave you with the last remark. So what advice would you give to somebody who wants to be chief of staff or is a current chief of staff based on the things that you've learned? And then we'll close our wonderful conversation.
Okay, so I lead with the thing that I probably should end with. The most direct path to mastering the strategic side of this role is the
Mhm.
T's, right? Trust, transparency, transformation. It's about you, trust, transparency, transformation. It's about them, trust, transparency, transformation. It's about the tools that you use and the reports that you give. All of
Mhm.
that. That's the most direct way. I think Anne Marie might know someone that's doing a master class in things that align to that. Um, I would leave you with understanding that, I did say it, chief of staff role is the ultimate training ground for strategic leadership. It just
Yeah.
is. I was prepared, like it prepared me for a lot of different things, whether in the military or here, or even in the past at Microsoft or at Semper US Gas and Power, or with any of the companies that I had to help or work with. Um,
Mhm.
it prepared me for that because it taught us, allowed me to see how organizations, people, and companies were accountable for their organization's transformation path, right? The biggest misconception, again, is that the role is administrative. It's not. You are literally the strategic accelerator. The things that Anne Marie's going to show you and teach you, those are the things that you need to do in order to be exceptional at this. And the
Mhm.
benefit is that you're learning how to be a strategic leader. That's
Thank you so much. That is a perfect way for us to close. Elizabeth and Blessing, if you can join me in the backstage, and everyone else, thank you again for your time. And like I said, I'll see you in December since we won't be having this in November. And have a very, very safe holiday and wonderful weekend. Thanks, everybody.